Welcome into the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. Joey Van Zummeren joined by Michael Stamps as always as Missouri basketball enters the final stretch of the season. Just 3 games left on the schedule, or 4 games left on the schedule, starting with South Carolina this Tuesday, coming off a exciting win over Alabama, number 4 Alabama this past Wednesday, and then dropping one to Arkansas on the road. So Missouri should move up. We're recording this on Sunday before the AP rankings come out, but you would still expect that Alabama win to carry quite a bit of weight, move up at least a spot or two in the AP poll. And again, really going to be an interesting competition here in these last few weeks of the SEC to find out SEC tournament seeding. And then obviously you would think with how stacked the SEC is, that tournament is going to carry quite a bit of weight for conference seeding. So it's going to be an exciting 2-3 week stretch here before the tournament for Missouri Basketball Selection Sunday on March 16th, obviously. But we're here to talk everything that's happened the past 2 weeks, in the past week for Missouri, and then look ahead as well. Michael, just kind of what has been your take on this Missouri basketball team with a mixed palette here?
Well, obviously Alabama was pretty, beyond impressive. Expecting a win from that game wasn't unrealistic. I mean, you're at home. You've only lost once at home. So it wasn't crazy to expect a win there, but the way they did it was, I mean, pretty incredible. Just jumped out to I think it was 12-0, and they were up by 20 at one point in the first half. It was ridiculously impressive. And Alabama was always going to come back in that one and maybe even win. Like, I don't think that would have been a surprise either if they would have came back in the second half. But for Missouri to obviously allow a run from Alabama and then respond again and keep the game, I think it got to 4 points late in the game. They responded and closed it out. It was really impressive. With Arkansas, it's almost a completely different story, and you could probably make an argument for it being the worst game they've played all year. I think there was some overreaction on Twitter, which you would kind of expect, right? A pretty impressive 3-game winning streak, including that Alabama win. So everyone's riding high. Maybe you get a little greedy. Missouri hasn't really played a bad game since I would make the argument against Texas. There have been games where they haven't been perfect, but you look back at Texas being the one where they just really weren't the same as what they've been all year. So just generally, the level of play, how good they've been playing the last, 7 games, 8 games, including 2 losses to Tennessee and Texas A&M. It's just going to happen. You get tired, you get fatigued, you make mental errors. It just happens in conference play. It wears you down, especially late in the year. So they didn't play well. They only lost by 7 and had a chance to get back into it late in the game. They made a couple plays, just couple lackluster plays on defense, and they allowed some shots and obviously could not get the ball in the hoop, which makes a pretty significant difference. So I would expect them to bounce back. I think this is an anomaly. Still a lot to take away from it because it shows Arkansas did a lot right and maybe paid the blueprint for what it takes to beat Missouri in these last 4 games in conference play, especially for 2 teams like Vanderbilt and Oklahoma who are bubble teams, I believe, or who are looking to get something to get into the tournament. Obviously, Arkansas just did that, so I think they create a little bit of a blueprint there in terms for how to beat Missouri and how to grab a big win.
Right. This game against Arkansas was just kind of a foreboding sign of what everybody knows of just how volatile basketball can be, why the sport the way that it is, and just this whole week for Missouri encapsulates that. I think obviously I would agree with you, Michael, that it is an anomaly. Dennis Gates pointed out after the game, really the things that usually work so well for them for whatever reason, and Arkansas I think really matched well up with Missouri in the Razorbacks' favor in order to take away some of those things. Really physical, tall team in Arkansas to be able to force those turnovers and consistently get to the foul line, and Missouri wasn't able to. And obviously, the loss of Josh Gray due to an illness doesn't help with that. But hey, I mean, you got to be able to overcome that stuff. So certainly one that Missouri can learn from moving forward. And This Alabama game, also one I think Missouri can take some signs like, hey, we should have some confidence in themselves moving forward here after this Alabama game. Like you said, Michael, really fast start in this one, and just really impressive performance from Missouri offensively to be able to go up against the highest scoring offense in the country. At least that's what it was heading into the game. And I mean, they still allowed Alabama 98 points, but being able to go shot for them and even outpace them, obviously that quick start helps with that. But then also in the second half, Alabama really stuck to the bread and butter. They weren't rattled by Missouri getting out to that fast start. Really loud arena at Mizzou Arena. Stuck to the bread and butter. Still went for a lot of those 3-point shots. Mark Sears still ended up with 35 points on the game, which is a pretty impressive mark. But Missouri then again came back, responded. Like you said, Michael, Alabama brought it within 6 points 2 separate times, and Missouri had the answers for them in that one. So again, this game against Alabama, really impressive offensively, defensively, stuff to improve on for sure. But Michael, more specifically, kind of just your takeaways from Missouri's performance in that game.
Yeah, I think you hit on the big one, and it was the most surprising. The most surprising thing to me was how fast Missouri played, and it's so impressive that they. I guess in certain ways changed how they normally play offense. They're a fast team, but not that fast, and to do it better than Alabama, which is kind of their offensive identity, right? So impressive, and it didn't really create any hiccups. It seemed like a natural process. So I don't know if that was a part of the game plan, if that's something they were planning on doing, is just running with them and seeing what happens. But I could tell you for sure that going in with the mindset of we're going to outshoot Alabama is not always one that's going to work. And I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth. I don't know if that was what their plan was going into this game. Maybe it just ended up that way, and they just had a good shooting night. But I mean, 39% from three compared to Alabama's 41.9 or 42. It's not like they shot the lights out of the ball. So that was obviously really impressive. And then the guy we haven't touched on yet, obviously the star from this one was Mark Mitchell, who had season-changing wake-up call, if you wanna call it that, because his level of aggression was just ridiculous. And Alabama is a big physical team, right? They have Mo Diabate, they have Jaron Stevenson, they have Grant Nelson, they have Cliff Amore. They run 3 forward lineups, or 3 big guy lineups sometimes with 3 guys over 6'8". That could be hard to guard. And Mark Mitchell, you stack him up with Amore and Diabate, like there are bigger guys than Mark Mitchell on the planet, and he was just dominant. He was out physical them. He was patient. I love how he uses pump fakes. That's a fundamental principle of basketball that is so underrated, and he does that so well. He's so patient in the post and waits for a shot. He got to the free throw line. He just played with aggression and power. And it was good to see. Good things are going to happen when Mark Mitchell is that level of aggressive against anybody. So definitely the standout performer from that one. His offensive output in that game was pretty darn impressive. But like you said, the pace of the game was shocking, really. Going into or playing Alabama and planning to outshoot them or outshooting them in general, like I said, doesn't always work. It was an NBA final score, and it was a really impressive offensive performance from Missouri.
Right, Mark Mitchell has really improved over these last few games, or at least has that it's finally showing up on the stat sheet, the impact that he's making. Dennis Cates talked after that Alabama game of Mark kind of over the season just becoming more comfortable in Missouri, becoming more coachable over the season, and really getting back to his instincts, what makes him a really elite basketball player. So that's been good to see. So yeah, I think that's everything from that Alabama game. Like I mentioned, Michael, good shooting performance from Missouri overall, 39.1 from 3 compared to 41.9 for Bama. Got to the free throw line 47 times compared to Alabama 21. So a lot of things working for Missouri in this one, and obviously not the direct opposite, but a lot of different different outcomes in the same areas for Missouri in this game against Arkansas. Not a great shooting performance from a few guys that they needed big shooting performances from. Caleb Grill specifically kind of felt like this whole game they were trying to keep things on the outside, which makes sense without Josh Gray in there. They had Trent Pierce and Aiden Shaw, or Aiden Shaw specifically, getting more playing time than he usually does. Also, Marcus Allen in that group, so playing a little bit smaller, obviously. So they're trying to keep things on the outside, and then things just were not falling on the outside, specifically Caleb Grill going 2 for 12. Dennis Gates even said that Caleb had open looks. They just weren't falling for whatever reason. Other than that, I mean, Missouri shot, 12 for 36 from the three overall. Mark Mitchell still made an impact. Only he had 17 points compared to 31 against Alabama. I thought Trent Pierce had a solid game. He's been playing better these past two games after kind of getting a message sent to him a few games ago, only playing 2 minutes. So overall, I mean, it's definitely not the end of the world for Missouri. Kind of an anomaly, but also just like you said, Michael, at the top of this, Arkansas kind of showing the way a little bit of what you can do to take down Missouri. Missouri had a 41 to, I believe, 33 point lead at the end of this first half. But even in that first half, it really felt like Arkansas was trailing Missouri pretty closely. And it felt like Missouri was just kind of a few slip ups away from breaking down. And that's ultimately what happened. Shooting got a lot worse in that second half. In the first half, I mean, Missouri, they had 18 turnovers in the game. I believe 12 came in the first half. They really just seem overwhelmed by that Arkansas defense, and that carried over for the entire game, and just couldn't find a rhythm offensively. So just not a lot of things. I would say mainly offense was the problem for Missouri in that one. If Caleb Grill shoots better in this, then I think Missouri comes out on top. So again, it's an anomaly, but also definitely something to note because anomalies can happen all the time in basketball and single elimination in the tournaments. So, Michael, what were your main takeaways specifically from this one?
I just thought they looked a step slow on defense with cutters and transition defense. I thought was unusually poor. There's one play that stands out to me, and I think it was a fast break lob to Trevor Brazil, and it was late in the game where they were down by 6 or 8 points in the last 2 minutes, trying to fight back, forced a couple turnovers, made a shot or two to maybe make Arkansas think or make Missouri fans think that there's a chance to get back in this one. And Marquez Warwick comes down for a layup, goes reverse to his right hand. It was pretty open, misses it. About 5 seconds later, it's a lob to, I believe it was Trevon Brazil, and with just nobody getting back on defense. And that, I feel like, was a kind of an indicator or a highlight of how the night felt defensively. Just a step behind, a step slow. I don't have any any reason to back that up, but I felt like it was apparent that they just weren't there. They won the rebounding battle. Missouri did, I believe. Yeah, they did, but it still seemed like even sometimes there was a lack of effort there, even though they won it by like 7 rebounds. So that was another thing too. But yeah, like you said, offensively, and I talked about this a little bit in the story last night about Arkansas's ability to force turnovers, and Marquez Warwick had a very brief quote about it, just saying that they were in the passing lanes, active hands. It's fundamental, basketball stuff. It's simple stuff, but they really just overplayed passing lanes and flustered Missouri into making decisions that they normally wouldn't make. So like you said, and like I said earlier, I think what they did on defense, just an aggressive ball pressure and jumping passing lanes and that sort of thing might be the blueprint to a way to limit this Missouri offense. Caleb Grill going 4 for 14 from the field also does not help, and might be hard to win games when he does that. And it's I saw a lot on X after the game and during the game even saying that his shot selection was bad, and I don't think I agree with that. I think I saw somewhere else where there aren't really any bad Caleb Grill shots at this point because he can make make some shots that nobody should be able to make. So I feel like he definitely has the green light to do just about whatever he wants. So no bad shots, and I didn't see any that jumped out as like, why did he take that? Maybe a few early in the shot clock, but you trust him to take those contested shots and those deep threes. They just weren't falling. And you look at it from another team's perspective when he goes for 30 points and hits 7 threes and he hits some shots that nobody should be able to make. They were just going in. Last night they weren't, or against Arkansas they just weren't. And there are games like that, and you just move on. Like we said, it's an anomaly. I would anticipate Caleb Grill not shooting 17% from the 3-point line frequently. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but I would not expect that to be a normal occurrence.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few that were probably a little too deep for Caleb, probably a little overconfident, but I agree with you. He's in the past month or so, he's had some where that have been outrageous makes.
Yeah, and I guess I should clarify that, and I mentioned this a little bit. Given the shot clock and the game situation, maybe you can say they were bad shots. Like, why are you shooting from 5 feet, like whatever, behind the 3-point line, and it's contested when you're down by 12 with 10 minutes left? But if it's anyone else, I think you say, why are you doing that? I think Caleb Grill maybe makes it a little bit better. But yeah, I do agree that there was some level of a level of contested shots and how deep they were that maybe make them not the highest efficiency ones.
Right. Yeah. So we'll put that game from Arkansas behind them again. South Carolina coming up here, and we'll get to that in a second. But Missouri overall, they're tied with Tennessee for third place in the Southeastern Conference, also tied with Texas A&M, and overall with SEC in these last 2 weeks of the season. A lot of parity, a lot of teams beating up on each other, a lot of even in kind of the middle tier beating up on the top tier. Never know what to expect. A lot of it is matchup dependent, and it'll be interesting to see when this bracket comes out on March 16th, how many SEC teams are in each quadrant. Those are going to be some tough regions if that ends up being the case. So yeah, I mean, like I said, Missouri still top 3. There's a lot of tiebreakers, obviously, but you need to be in the top 4 to end up getting that first round bye. I believe that's still how it works with the 16 teams now. So first round bye in the SEC tournament, obviously not NCAA. So excited to see how that all shakes out again. On to this game against South Carolina. They just got their first conference win of the season. Jordan Butler, almost 2 years into his career, it took him, 31-32 SEC losses during his first, the former Missouri center. So good for him. But South Carolina coming into this one, I mean, as Missouri was last year when they went in winless in conference play, I would say South Carolina maybe isn't as bad as that record would show, but they're certainly not being confused for a great team either. They've been blown out by the good teams. They lost by 14 to LSU, 88-67 to Florida. Played Ole Miss close, 72-68, 80-57 to Kentucky. Played Texas A&M pretty close, 76-72. But they're near the bottom in just about every category in the conference. Michael, what do you know about this USC team?
Not exactly related to the team, but I'd like to think that Missouri and the fans should not underestimate this game at all, given that they were in the exact same spot a year ago. So just throwing that one out there. One thing I do know for certain is that they have sneakily a potential lottery pick at the top of the roster in Colin Murray Boyles. Such a unique, versatile second year forward who I think, as an NBA draft guy, I think he has a lot of upside, even as a second year guy. And, he's not necessarily traditional. He's 6'7", 245 pounds. So not exactly what you think of as now a current or modern NBA power forward, because that's what he plays for the Gamecocks. But he can score, he can rebound, and he's also a great passer. He's a good defender as well. Not necessarily the best shooter, but he's a threat from out there. The 245 pounds signifies he is a powerful scorer. He gets to the rim. I'd like to think he will match up really, really well with Mark Mitchell. I guess not well, but that should be a really, really intriguing matchup because I think they both play similar styles of basketball where they're not shoot first or perimeter oriented forwards. They can do it, but they both want to get downhill and back you down. So that should be an interesting matchup there. Outside of that, it gets a little rockier. Um, you know, uh, SEC fans will remember Nick Pringle. He was with Alabama last year. Um, Miles Stute was with Vanderbilt for most of his college career. So there's a couple SEC veterans. Zachary Davis and Jacoby Wright have been around with the Gamecocks for a little while as well. So obviously Jordan Butler too, which his role with that team is pretty minimal, which is maybe surprising. But he hasn't had the opportunity, unfortunately, to do much. But they have some guys who could beat you. Murray Boyles is going to be an All SEC player. Jamari Thomas is their second leading scorer. He's from UNC Wilmington, but they have some guys who can beat you. It's SEC or South Carolina is the only SEC game on anyone's schedule that most people would expect to go into and walk away with a win. So I would set that same standard for Missouri, and I'd imagine they will with themselves. But no game in the SEC is an easy game. I think everybody understands that by now, especially after Arkansas. So you have to go in and take care of business. It's definitely not going to be, shouldn't be the hardest game they play all year. But you still have to go in and take care of business.
Home should be an exciting way to end out the season. So we appreciate you tuning into this episode of the All Things Mizzou podcast and hope you do the same for the rest of our coverage as we take you all the way through March Madness for this Missouri team.